Hi everyone, this is Ryan Reagan, the founding partner of HKExcel. So I assume if you're watching this video right now, you probably have a TOK presentation coming up and you're very confused about how to do it because your teacher at school don't give you enough instructions and you're really confused. Okay, so in this video, I'm going to teach you exactly how to do a TOK presentation that will get you an A. Okay, to make this video, I've worked with our TOK experts at HKExcel who have gotten an A before for their TOK presentation. So in this video, I'm basically going to give you a framework, a structure of your TOK presentation that will get you an A, and also many concrete tips on how you should prepare for your TOK presentation. Okay, so by the end of the video, you should feel very confident about getting an A in your TOK presentation. Also, to complement this video, I have a TOK presentation outline that we're giving out for free. Okay, so if you want to get this TOK presentation outline, you can fill in the form in the link below in the description. Okay, and also just to tell you more about ourselves before we start, so HKExcel is a leading IB tuition center in Hong Kong. Okay, so we have tuition services for all major IB subjects, right? So if you need help on any IB subject, if you want to boost your IB grade, you can register for a free trial lesson with our IB experts in the link in the description. Okay, so I look forward to seeing you. If you need any help, you can register for a free trial, so completely free. Okay, you can come to see if our tutor fits you before you decide whether you're going to join. Okay, so without further ado, let us get into the gist of the video. Let us look at the framework of the TOK presentation. Actually, it's very simple. A lot of teachers at school like to overcomplicate it, but to get an A, it's simpler than you think, basically. Okay, so the TOK presentation. First, you want to introduce a real-life situation, an interesting real-life situation. It can be anything, right? And then you link that a real-life situation to a knowledge question. So because of this real-life situation, there's a knowledge question that you have come up with. Okay, so what's a knowledge question? This is very basic. Knowledge question is an open-ended question about how knowledge is obtained. Okay, so normally a knowledge question begins with how, why, and to what extent. Okay, so a question about how knowledge is obtained or acquired. Okay, so basically you talk about your knowledge question. Then you come up with claims and counterclaims related to your knowledge question. Okay, so after you finish up one knowledge question, you can then lead into a sub-knowledge question and develop, and then again with the sub-knowledge question, talk about claims and counterclaims. Okay. So basically, so to make it clear for you, you have a real life situation, link that to a knowledge question, evaluate that knowledge question with claims and counterclaims, and then bring up another knowledge question and then explore that knowledge question. So that's basically the structure of a TOK presentation. You might be confused right now, but I'll walk you through an example. Okay, so there's an example that our TOK experts have come up with. So I'll walk you through it right now. Okay, so let's look at the example. So the real life situation that I have chosen, or our TOK expert have chosen, is that recently LeBron James passed Michael Jackson's all-time scoring record in the NBA. So he broke Michael Jackson's records, and this have led to a lot of debates about who is the greatest of all time in basketball history. So a lot of basketball fans start to believe that LeBron is the greatest of all time, and who was even greater than Michael Jordan, right? So the knowledge question that we can come up with is how does emotion influence personal knowledge production? Because as we can see from the real life situation, it has become a lot of people's personal knowledge that LeBron is the greatest of all time. But and we know that a lot of emotions is at stake when it comes to these sorts of debates and when individuals form their opinion. But how does emotion really influence this personal knowledge production? Well, the claim is that the positive claim is that how you feel about a certain thing forms your opinion. And so one example is so to support this claim, you need to come up with some real world examples. For example, in psychology, we know that there is confirmation bias, which is that when you have a certain belief, you start to look out for things that would support your belief. So for example, if a racist person who may think that black people have a lower IQ than average, I'm not saying this is my belief, I'm talking about people who are racist, all right? So people who are racist who have this opinion may have may suffer confirmation bias, which means that they will only look out for evidence that support their opinion, right? So this is often the reason why people continue to hold on to racist beliefs, because they have a racist belief and then they only pick out they only look out for things that would confirm their bias. So another example, let's say if somebody is a huge fan of LeBron James, so these people are more likely to only focus on positive aspects of LeBron James and disregard negative aspects, and therefore they will have a bias towards LeBron James, because people tend to seek out on things that support their own beliefs. Okay, that's confirmation bias. Another example is selection bias, which is saying that when people observe certain things, they often have a bias in their selection of data. So for example, somebody who recently bought a pair of glasses, who started wearing glasses, are more likely to observe other people who wear glasses, right? So they might have a bias in terms of believing that a lot of people wear glasses than what is actually true, right? So that's selection bias, right? Because people who wear glasses, for example, tend to only pick out other people who wear glasses, right? Now, what's the counterclaim? Counterclaim is that other ways of knowing also will influence the production of personal knowledge. So for example, the use of logic, right? So many people have personal knowledge about their finances, right? Like what is a good financial investment? These sorts of things, people have their own personal knowledge, or about their diet, like what kind of food should they be eating. These are also forms of personal knowledge. And to form these sorts of knowledge, people generally use logic as part of their way of knowing. Like they would logically decide that this sort of investment or financial decision is best for them, right? And the use of memory, for example, memory as a way of knowing is very useful in people's personal knowledge production, especially knowledge about oneself. So how do people form personal knowledge about themselves? It's to a large extent based on their memory about what happened, right? So this is how we would go about exploring the first knowledge question, right? Just as an example. Obviously in your presentation, you should go into more detail, but this is an example of the direction you should be taking. So let's look at the secondary knowledge question. So we can, basically we look at the real life situation and then come up with another knowledge question. Okay, so the second knowledge question I would come up with is, to what extent is emotion useful in the production of personal knowledge? Okay, so the claim I would make is, it is highly useful in the pursuit and justification process of forming personal knowledge that informs an individual's identities and everyday decision. In other words, first, emotion is very useful when it comes to forming knowledge, forming personal knowledge about everyday decisions and a person's identity. Okay, so elaboration. So because emotion leads us to pursue certain things, like emotion is what directs us to set goals and what motivates us to pursue knowledge or produce knowledge in different situations, right? So so that's why emotion is very important in the production of knowledge, because it is what motivates us to pursue knowledge, right? And as humans, we tend to use emotion to justify our personal knowledge, right? Because emotion influences how we feel and interpret certain things. So that's why emotion clearly plays a vital role in us forming our own opinions, right? Because emotions affect the way we interpret things, right? So as an example, emotion clearly plays a role when people debate about who is the greatest of all time in basketball or in football or in soccer, right? So for example, a person who grew up with Michael Jordan as a role model at a very young age is likely to feel very connected to Michael Jordan, especially somebody who is young and African American with a similar background to Michael Jordan, right? So there's an emotional investment in the production of knowledge that Michael Jordan is the GOAT, right? Because there's an emotional attachment between the person and Michael Jordan. So that's why emotion clearly plays a role in the production of this piece of knowledge, right? Another example is when people make a lot of decisions that are subjective in nature. For example, what to wear, who to befriend, right? All of these decisions are um, are highly subjective, and it requires and it's and a lot of time is based on how people feel about certain things, right? So, for example, if you feel more comfortable with a certain person, you'll more likely befriend them, right? So, as you can see, this is an example to show that emotion plays an important role in the production of personal knowledge, right? Like, especially for personal relationship matters, as we mentioned just now, how much you value a friend, how much you value a relationship, all of these types of personal knowledge are very much dependent on your emotions, right? Like how you feel about a certain friendship will determine how much you prioritize it, right? So emotion plays a huge role in these sorts of personal knowledge, right? And for aesthetics matter, different people have a different aesthetic point of view, right? Some people likes black, some people likes yellow, right? So as you know, like beauty is in the eye of beholder. It's in the eye of the beholder, right? So emotions influence how we feel about a certain aesthetic choice, and therefore it influences our decisions, right? Okay, it's also very important for each claim that you link it to a certain area of knowledge. So besides personal knowledge, you can use arts, right? So in arts, emotion affects how we interpret a certain art piece, and therefore it affects our knowledge about arts, right? Now the counterclaim. So whilst emotion is important for us to pursue knowledge, helps us to begin the knowledge pursuit in general, it creates bias, right? So it can often jeopardize the production of knowledge by affecting the validity for a belief in a negative way. So basically, in simple terms, it creates bias, right? And we rely on emotions to create knowledge. And bias will in turn reduce the validity of a certain knowledge claim, right? Now, how can we elaborate on this counterclaim? So you can relate it back to the real life situation, which is where a lot of people believe that LeBron is the greatest of all time. So first of all, it is important to understand that the greatest is a very subjective sort of term, right? It's a difficult concept to sort of quantify and to reach a consensus on, right? So even if most people do believe that LeBron is the best, it is difficult for us to validate. How do we actually validate that he's the greatest of all time, right? So it is important to understand that there are cognitive biases that come into play when we say that LeBron James is the greatest of all time, right? So yeah, in general, you can come up with examples of where emotions are used to come up with knowledge where there is a bias, where the bias makes it difficult for us to validate the certain knowledge claim, right? So for example, you can draw examples from history, from the human sciences, etc. You should summarize what you talked about for your for the two knowledge questions that you have explored, right? So summarize what you have concluded for the two knowledge questions, so your claims and counterclaims. Then apply the conclusions that you have made to other real life situations that you have explored, right? So basically just sort of repeat what you have said earlier in your presentation, basically in a very conclusive manner, okay? So now you should understand the overall framework of the TOK presentation. So it's very important when you develop each knowledge question and when you develop your claims and counterclaims that you come up with good real-world examples, okay? So if you have any further questions, I know this video might be slightly brief because it is meant to be like an instructional video to help you to come up with a presentation, but it is not supposed to be for you. This is not designed for you to entirely copy it. So that's why if you have any questions, you can feel free to register for a free shot lesson, and our TOK experts will be sure to guide you on a more personal level. Okay, if you want help on any other subjects, we would love to help you as well. Okay, so see you soon.